Hey, you're watching Driver 88 and I'm coming to you from the very third row of the enormous brand new Mazda CX90 hybrid. Now usually we review supercars and builds and sports cars and things. Every now and again we do a side quest like a Cherry or a van, and today we have the very largest SUV, premium SUV made in Japan from Mazda. Now, I've spent a decent amount of time in a CX90 in the last couple of years, and I've been really quite impressed with the way that Mazda has improved the sort of quality and ambience and feel of their cars for the everyday driver. Now, it's a little bit confusing from their website when you see that they have a CX60, a CX8, a CX70, a CX80, a CX90. All you need to know essentially is this is their very largest model. It's almost 2 meters wide, it's 5 meters long, and you can have it like this in a 6-seater with captain's chairs, as well as a 7-seater. And it has one of my very most favorite configurations of an inline turbo 6. And we're going to take it for a drive today, and for those, I guess, small amount of people today that have more than 2 children in their family, this is one for you. If you don't want to spend enormous amounts of money on, say, a Cayenne or an X5 or X7, this may well be the premium choice for you and your family. So what do you guys think of the looks of this large hauler? I personally think it's relatively pleasing to the eye considering what its use case is. I particularly like the look of the smaller CX60 as well. Probably better in my opinion than a Telluride and the Palisade and the Explorer, but again, of course, looks are up to the individual. So ahead of me we have an inline 6 turbo, as I said, with hybrid assistance, 3.3 litres of inline 6. The 0 to 100 comes up in just over 8 seconds, and we're supposed to be getting 8.5 litres per 100 kilometres on average. If you're driving around or accelerating pretty hard, I don't think we're going to be able to match that today, but let's get behind the wheel and take this thing for a drive. So the first thing that has come to my attention whilst driving the CX90 is that everything is really quite smooth and quiet, and that's what Mazda is aiming for with these 60, 70, 80, 90 cars, is refinement. And the car is very quiet. When you turn it on, incredibly smooth, as I just said, and I like the way that it takes the speed bumps and all the broken road and the crappy roads that we have here in Australia. It really glides over them quite well. We have 21-inch 275s all the way around, so we have really large wheels and tires, and it does a good job of keeping the NVH down. I've been really impressed with how well it does on the freeway. So sitting at 100 kilometers per hour, it is incredibly quiet. Everyone should be in entire comfort whilst going through broken roads. Now, one of the things that sort of annoys me a little bit is these, in the third row, there's these rear headrests which kind of impede your visibility. I want to see if I can take those off or pull them down, because when you've got a car that's this large, 2.2 tons and 5 meters long, you want as much visibility as possible, and changing lanes and stuff. Performance. Now, I'm not going to review this car as a sports car or anything like that. We do have 340 horsepower and it's just smooth. We've got an 8-speed auto, which I am not very familiar with in Mazda, and it drops down when you want it to. We do have a sport mode, and when you do put your foot all the way down to the floor, we get some comically induced sports sounds being pumped into the engine bay, which I can't even decipher what sort of engine or configuration it is. It doesn't sound that great, but it's kind of a bit of a whooshy noise. We've also got paddles. I've got paddles to change my gears, which I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just in so many cars these days they decided to add that. I don't think it's really required. The body roll is really nice though. So I've driven a number of SUVs lately as well as premium ones. I really like the way that this thing changes weight. It's nice and progressive and it's uber quiet. You would think with such large tires we would have some tire roar, but I've just been on the freeway for most of today and nothing. Really, really nice. Speaking of sound, this is an upgraded stereo system from, oh god, I think it's 12 speakers from Bose, but I've been testing out the sound and it matches really quite well with my Audi RS3. I know different cars, but similar sort of price range. The sound is really quite nice. My phone connected quite easily, but in everyday driving I have not gotten anywhere near the 8.5 litres per 100 kilometers. I think that that may well come down a fair bit. We've got regenerative braking, and that's another thing. Speaking of the braking, I really like the way that it brakes. So rather than all the weight just spilling over the tires and spilling over the wheels, it brakes in such a nice progressive manner. And I say that considering I've recently driven a GLC 63 and I've driven Range Rovers and all these cars that are twice the amount of money, and they kind of felt more wallowy than this in their comfort modes. So really quite impressed with Mazda's more premium offerings lately. Now let's just check the turning circle, as this is a big boy. Oh, that's full lock. It's quite decent. I've got it in sport mode now. And look, it's a lot of weight to be trying to shuffle around with just a 3.3 litre engine, but it's not glacial, but it's not fast. But I don't expect it to be. So welcome to the interior of the CX90. We have quite an interesting set of specs in here. So one of them that I'm quite happy with is the 12.3 inch touchscreen here with, of course, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as standard, wireless. It's very clear. It doesn't have that much reflection. It's relatively fast with its responses. Your central screen is nice and recessed and very clear as well. You've also got a heads-up display with your traffic alerts and things. This interior is very interesting. We have Napa leather on this top spec CX90. I would not particularly choose, if I had, say, 2 or 3 children, this cream Napa leather, although it does look rather nice. We have also inlaid, hand-stitched sort of design here, including this Japanese maple, which I hope you can see relatively clearly, which is a very interesting touch, and it all adds up to 115,000 Australian dollars, and it starts the CX90 at $80,000. We've got quite a small leather steering wheel, which is quite nice in the hands. It is a little bit taking a while for me to get used to driving such an enormous car with a short steering wheel, but all your touch points, they feel quite decent. I like these air vents on the side here. These kind of aluminum or aluminium sort of attachments are kind of interesting as well, and everything is very, very easy to get used to. We've got wireless charging down here, and we've got a huge console with 2 Type-C ports and 2 cup holders. I really like it. I've gotten used to it very quickly. Your aircon is all buttons. Your buttons are pretty easy to follow. It's quite decent in here. I think it definitely matches up with any other European interior for this sort of money. Incredibly easy to get into the captain seats here in the middle. We have aircon. We've got 2 Type-C ports. This is really quite comfortable. I'm sitting a little bit high, and I hate to be a sook, but I kind of get a little bit nauseous if I'm sitting too high in the rear seats of a large SUV. Now, what's great here for Australia is that we have heated and cooled seats, which I do like. Also, we've got shades which come with the car, which are very useful, of course, for having children, babies, kids in the back seat. It's just, well, in Australia, very, very useful. I like it. Now you can option 3 across instead of the captain's seats in the middle row. And also the, just a quick note, the sunroof is not as sort of panoramic or as large as maybe some others in its class, but it is certainly still large. Okay, our captain seats in the rear, we can lift back to get in our rear 2 seats. And if we want to put this all the way down, an enormous amount of space. So welcome to the third row. I'm 180 centimeters and I'm almost touching, I guess, the back seats. The transmission tunnel sticks out a little bit, but here we do have 2 Type-C ports and 2 cup holders. So you've got, you know, a fair amount of amenities here in the back. Also some hooks. You've got decent amount of visibility through the rear windows. But yeah, it's going to be kids only back here, I think. And that is going to suit most buyers. So the Mazda CX90, I have been quite impressed with the technology and refinement in driving this car. Keep in mind, even though this is $100,000 Australian, that if you're after a BMW X7 with also a 6-cylinder in it, you're looking at about 90% more money. So if you're a person who's an owner of a large growing family, I certainly think this is one that you should shortlist. I really have enjoyed driving it. This is Driver 88. We'll see you next time.